Everybody, welcome to a special edition of UJ Sports Live. My name is Rodney Bullsey. I am joined by Trent Smallwood, the one of the recruiting experts at UJSports.com, a longtime contributor to this site, one of the first guys I hired when I took over UJSports.com, and I'm glad to have Trent with us tonight as we talk a little bit of Georgia transfer portal stuff.
Well, they don't know. They don't know that you landed me at Buford.
The one freaking signing that worked out at Buford High School was I went and interviewed Trent there at a game and pestered him and saw what he thought. And I'm like, tell me about that kid there. And he told me all about him. I'm like, tell me about that kid over there. He told me all about him. I'm like, what about that one? He goes, man, that is a freshman going to Trinity Christian. You know, he had the little G, power G on his back plate. I'm like,
Yeah.
Sure enough, the kid blew up. So you were right. But anyway, that's it. Yeah, Tyreek. So the purpose of this week's show, or this current show, is to talk about some of the surprise entries in the portal and the kind of news that broke a little while ago that Jamon Dumas Johnson is considering or is expected to put his name in the transfer portal. Now, I want to tell folks from what I'm hearing, it's still in the air. So now, expected to and still in the air means it's an ongoing situation. He hasn't done it yet. The minute he does put his name in there, we will let you know. But I mean, Matt Zenitz has reported that he's expected to. If Matt says he's going to, then I've got no reason not to believe him. But my sources who are very close to the situation tell me that it's up in the air, and I trust my sources over everyone. So that goes back and forth. And again, as of Monday, there was a Georgia assistant coach or somebody on the staff saying Smile Munden and Dumas Johnson are coming back. I thought, man, that's going to be great news. Well, can't wait to see them confirm it. And then nothing ever happened. And I guess that's why so many people they want to see the tweet or announcement from like Tate Ratledge. Yes, I'm coming back. Carson Beck. Yes, I'm coming back. Javon Bullard. Yes, I'm coming back. Whoever's leaving or whoever's going. I think it's the waiting that's the worst. And we've seen this with the Dylan Raiola thing. People are like, well, when's he just going to decommit? I'm like, don't you want him to stay? He doesn't need to string us along. People want closure, Trent. They want closure. So give me your thoughts on Dumas Johnson entering the portal and what that might mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of catches everybody off guard because he's got the preseason All-American. He was a national title winner last year. And at the same time, this is a loaded position for Georgia, and I think you lose him most in the leadership role. He was the quarterback of the defense. He called the defense. Do I think C.J. Allen is a bright kid that can come in and step right in and do it? Yeah, I do. But I think you miss that experience. Now, at the same time, I think a lot of people came in this year expecting this to be Dumas Johnson's last year due to the NFL, not the transfer portal. And I think by the sounds of it, he didn't get the grade he might not have wanted. And with a crowded linebacker room, with Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen coming on at the end of the season, with probably going to see if Munden does come back, seeing a 4-man rotation next year, your snaps just get limited. And this is his last money year, and he's got to make a name for himself. So it makes sense on that regard because you're looking at 4 guys that are going to play, and then you've got Jalen Walker who's going to play, and so it's a crowded room, and it makes sense for Dumas Johnson, even though it's a little shell shocker because he is that quarterback of the defense. It is a little shell shocker, but it does make sense.
Yeah, we'll bring on Dane Young here in a second. I want to get to this question from Rip. He says, how does a team that's won 29 of 30 now stand to lose 20 dues to the portal? Well, that's the point. You're really, really good. And you're going to not everybody can play, as Trent just said. So let's look over this real quick. Darius Smith, very highly touted kid, hasn't played a whole lot. Jonathan Jefferson, very highly touted kid, didn't play a whole lot. Brad Vandegrift, Vandegrift's a 5-star quarterback. How much has he seen the field? Are you going to take Carson Beck out? No, not going to happen. C.J. Madden, very highly recruited, hasn't played a whole lot. Jackson Meeks hasn't played a whole lot. Austin Blasky still fighting for a spot. Jared Zirkle is not kicking field goals. He's just doing kickoffs. EJ Lightsey, hardly ever seen the field. Mekhi Muse is walk-on. Nyland Green hasn't played. Xavier Sori hasn't played a whole lot. Now we get down to Marvin Jones Jr., and he has played more, but in 2 years, hasn't played a whole lot. Now, that's why, and I bring all that up to say, when the portal opened, I said 10 to 15. Somebody who knows a lot more about this than me said 10 to 20. So it's definitely a possibility that you lose 20 guys. They lost, 15 last year or so, and maybe 13 the year before that. So that's just the baseline. You're going to do that when you recruit so well. If we want to put up Georgia's recruiting class, right now, the number one recruiting class in the nation, do you think you can bring in 28 guys and they all play and all be happy, knowing that if they go somewhere else, they're going to get more playing time or more NIL?
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be.
You look up and down this list, and all you can think about going up and down this list is recruited over, recruited over, recruited over, recruited over, recruited over, recruited over. I mean, every single one of these guys, besides maybe Zeed Haynes, who was a freshman this year, and still you're bringing in portal guys who are overcoming Zeed, so it still can be recruited over. All these guys have been recruited over. Even Zirkle at kicker, recruited over, and it's just you're losing a lot of guys, but you're losing a lot of guys who've been recruited over, and it's just that's what happens in an era of NIL, an era of transfer portal, in an era that Kirby is landing number one classes year after year after year. This is what's going to happen. This is going to happen every year because you're going to have juniors who get recruited over, such as guys like Xavier Sori, Nyland Green, talented guys who can play. They can play somewhere, but they're just down the depth chart at the University of Georgia.
I agree. Let's bring on Dane Young real quick. I'm sure he's got nothing important to say, but we'll bring him on anyway. So, Dane, give me your thoughts real quick on the portal. We'll get to some of the questions here in the comment section.
I agree with what most of what y'all are saying, though. In this particular sample size of the end of Georgia's season, we just saw Xavier Sori play 30+ snaps in the SEC championship. So for a particular game, they thought they needed him. Now I don't know how well he played. I can tell you that I don't think that would be in line for him moving forward.
Which I thought that was odd after coming off 4 straight weeks without even touching the field.
Right. The truth's in the middle here. Like I think there are some things to be worried about if you're Georgia fans, but I don't think the sky's falling, because I look at Georgia's offense that's returning, and I just don't see a whole lot of firepower there. Like Branson Robinson better be very, 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 very good and healthy. But at wide receiver right now,
but you're not losing anybody in the portal at running back.
But you're losing guys to the NFL.
But are you gaining somebody?
We'll have to find that out, right?
Well, they're doing everything they can. So here's the thing. I like this one from Chris Landino. Says, no need to panic. We have Kirby, and this is happening at every other school. Yes, it is happening at every other school. And somebody hit me up on Twitter, goes, Alabama's just laughing all the way to the playoffs. Do you remember what happened last year when Alabama didn't make the playoffs and Georgia did? No, but we knew a ton of guys were going in the portal. None of them said boo until after the championship game. But Alabama had a ton of guys going in the portal. When this game's over, or if they win or lose or win the championship, the minute their season is over, they're going to have a ton of guys going to the portal. So it's coming. And here's the other thing. We need to make this very clear because it gets overlooked a lot. There are 2 transfer portal windows. If you want to transfer within the SEC and be able to play next year, you have to go in the first window. You can't wait through spring. You go through spring practice and then transfer to another SEC team, you have to sit out a year. So if you're going to go and play in the South, closer to home, play in the SEC, the best conference out there. If you're Brock Vandegrift and you want to play at Kentucky, you have to be in this portal. You can't wait to go through spring and see how it works out. So if you're Xavier Sori, if Michael Williams is a possibility. If he decides to transfer to someplace, we haven't heard that he's putting his name in, but I know that he's thought about it. Julian Humphreys as well. A starter next year and a current starter. Both those guys could go in the portal. If they do, and they want to play for an SEC team, they have to go into the portal while it's open now. They can't wait till after spring practice. So that's part of it.
And the playoff teams get a extended portal.
And all eyes will be on them. They're not fighting with everybody else at that point. So if you find out how much you're worth, then that's why it's going to go down. So I'm with you, Dane. The firepower question stinks, but look at who Georgia's checking out right now. They're trying to get Trevor Etienne out of Florida, one of the best players on Florida's team. He's in the portal. So it's happening at Florida. It's happening at Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's offensive line gone, quarterback's gone. OSU losing players. Everybody's losing players. They're going to the portal. But now Georgia's looking at some very good talent to bring them in. So all of a sudden you could get an upgrade at running back, to your point. It's like, I don't know if Branson Robinson's going to be the guy. I don't know if Roderick Robinson or Andrew Paul could do it. But if you can get Trevor Etienne, you've just upgraded through the portal. So the guys you lost, it sucks. But Nyland Green wasn't going to get a lot of playing time here. But if you bring in Trevor Etienne, it works out great.
Well, I think that's a piece of this
that stinks, but you brought in Rara and Dominic Lovett.
To this point, I don't think Georgia has been one of the better teams in the country at the portal, but that's they haven't needed to. They've recruited so well.
Yes.
That we had this in our group chat earlier. I was talking about with someone this week, like, who's the best transfer that Georgia's had in this era of college football? I came up with Darion Kendrick just because he was a starter on a national championship team at corner. But like, there are a lot of answers about that quality. Tyke Smith was mentioned. Maurice Smith mentioned, just as a culture change at Georgia. We went on and on about it. You haven't seen these guys that, 4 out of the last 7 Heisman winners have been transfers, and you just haven't seen that caliber at Georgia. But again, I don't think that's necessarily lack of success. I think it's been lack of need. Well, now you have that need, and Georgia's kind of has to prove it.
And Georgia's being much more aggressive this year because they've got that need. I mean, they definitely need some outside linebackers. They could use a running back. They could use a wide receiver. They could use defensive linemen. There's a lot of guys going there there's definite needs. And what are you seeing? How many guys have we seen come visit Athens? There's 2 guys right now, Trent. Are there not in Athens?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wide receiver and a tight end, which tight end is the odd one, but wide receiver, Georgia's, I would say what Georgia has lacked the past couple of years is true outside wide receivers. And I think you've had a bunch of slot guys, and that's all fine and well going up against teams that are not going to press the dog piss out of you like Alabama. And when they start playing physical like that, it gets a little tougher. Separation gets a little harder. And I think that's what you've seen. And having the player from Miami, Colby Young, on campus right now, 6'5" receiver, reminds you a lot of several guys Georgia's had in the past, including another transfer from Miami. So I think you've got to have those guys on the outside against those teams like Alabama to make tough contested catches, because as good as Ladd is, and I think Ladd is one of the best wide receivers Georgia's had in a while, him and George Pickens, but he is 5'11" maybe, and 175, 180 pounds, and that's just he's going to get pressed, and he's better suited for the slot. And when you got Dominic Lovett there, you got a bunch of guys better suited for the slot.
Well, and you need blocking receivers as well, because I think the best 3 blocking receivers in this team are gone for next year. I think Ladd's probably one of those when healthy, but Rosemy-Jacksaint Sr. and then Jackson Meeks, who would come in at goal line stuff, is now at Syracuse. So you need some bigger body receivers for that purpose too.
I wanted to touch on this real quick because I'm saying don't panic, because I can go over that list of guys that have and I made this point last night with one of our readers at UJSports.com. I'm like, people get caught up on there's 15, 16 guys in the portal. Yeah, well, 3 of them are walk-ons. Even if they're in 13 of the 15, let's say 15 true scholarship players, 13 of them are not in the 2 deep. Now you losing Dumas Johnson, you lose a starter there. If you lose Michael and Julian, those are 2 starters. Marvin Jones Jr. started 1 game. Xavier Story started 1 game. I think Marvin's started more than that, but one of those two started the Alabama game, the first one they lost in 20-something years. Not blaming him, just saying it's not like this guy was starting all these games. So you haven't lost a ton from the production side. But I don't want to discount the fact that you're not a better team without Dumas Johnson. You're a worse team. You're not a better team without Michael Williams. You're a much worse team. You're not a better team without Julian Humphreys if he goes. You're a worse team. Not having Xavier Sorey, that's one less option you got. You know, they put him in there for a reason. There's something they saw. There's something that his skill set matched. They wanted him out there. Again, you only lost the game by 3. Nobody can point to, well, Xavier Sorey lost that game. Hell, maybe it would have been worse without him. We don't know. I won't get into the letters of it, but so when I say don't panic, you can still be upset. Yeah, you're not. It's losing these players is not helping you. Losing some of them hurts a lot worse. So 2 things can be true at one time. You could lose 12 players and it won't have any effect on Georgia's win-loss record at all. You could also lose 5 players and it'd be very, very devastating to your team. So 2 things we can keep 2 thoughts together at the same time.
Yeah, even a guy like Blasky, I mean, he's not a big contributor, but he's also pushing guys like Ernest Green to be a better player. And
he's going to go start somewhere.
Yep.
And people be like, well, shit, why didn't you start at Georgia?
Nyland Green pushing, several of those corners that beat him out to be a better player. So I think that's where you lose. You lose guys that are talented, that are back on the depth chart, but they were also pushing those guys to be better players ahead of them because they are talented.
Well, in the frustration of all the transfer portal stuff, and this has happened on the dog vent too, I'm just seeing a lot of fans, like in some cases, even lobby this at some of the Georgia players of like, oh, they're just not as loyal anymore as they used to be, or this or that. You look down this list, you see dudes that 3-4 years that have busted their tails trying to find a way to play for Georgia. Blasky comes to mind with that. He was in line to compete for starting left tackle this year, and even though he's more of a natural center. Which, by the way, I think he's going to end up at an ACC school from what I've been told. Brock Vandegrift, same way. Like he competed for multiple years trying to become quarterback and didn't seem like there was a path to that. Yeah. So like, I don't think there was a lack of like loyalty or a lack of this or that. It's just like after a certain point, you have to look around and say, all right, if it's not going to happen for me here, I'm running out of years.
Very true. And some of these guys, I mean, Brock graduated. Blasky graduated. These guys have their degrees, so they're going on to now they're graduate transfers. And to me, if a guy's graduated from your school, you cannot begrudge him going on to do something else. You know, I'm all for it, and I really hope they do.
Now, conversely, though, Roddy, like the fan perspective, I understand the hurt when some of these players go on and are really good elsewhere. I mean, you have Jermaine Burton at Alabama, you have A.D. Mitchell at Texas in the playoff. I look at this list, like Vandegrift could do really well at Kentucky. Darius Smith, if he ends up at Missouri, like he was visiting, I think Darius is an awesome athlete. Just maybe the change of sceneries was needed to get
it. True, but like Major Burns goes and starts for LSU. Yeah. He wouldn't have started at Georgia.
Correct.
Tresman Marshall started for Alabama. He wouldn't start at Georgia.
Amir Speed.
Amir, oh yeah. Amir got some. Who's the wide receiver that went to Arkansas? Matt Landers.
Every now and again, you've had a starter that like Tyreek Stevenson would have still started at Georgia, and he decided to leave.
And
but that's been the rarity.
Loss. Yeah.
But
losing Matt Landers didn't hurt you. Helped him is a win-win for them. It's good for him. It's good for Arkansas. It's good for Georgia. He leaves, and that gives Georgia room to bring in somebody else. So I'm not sure, like one-to-one, who replaced him, but that's a pretty big one there. While we got Trent here, Trent, talk about some of those guys that are coming in, because I see a lot of people talking about, Justin Williams is coming, and that's one that Kirby has had to fight tooth and nail to keep from going to Texas, because Texas wants him badly.
And honestly, I think removing a guy like Dumas Johnson, and as bad as it sounds, it's better for him. And it is more, kind of more of a recruiting pitch for him coming in and not having to sit behind 4 guys instead of maybe 2 or 3.
Right.
So I think, he is extremely talented, long athlete. Kind of reminds you of what Georgia's accustomed to bringing in. I think Dumas Johnson was a little bit different than what Georgia's had. He didn't have the Roquan. He didn't have the Nakobe sideline to sideline speed. He was more downhill, a downhill linebacker, and you just don't. I think Pop was very good, but I think the guys coming in are just better athletes. I think as a whole, maybe not a better linebacker at this point, but just better athletes. Justin Williams is one of those guys. Chris Cole is one of those guys. I think both of those guys are extremely talented. I think Justin Williams is probably a little bit further along because he's been playing the position long. Chris Cole is more of a guy that was 190 pounds, 14, 15 months ago and is playing safety. So I think Justin Williams a little further along. I think he has the opportunity to come in and be a guy that plays a Jalen Walker role or a third down role on defense. He's very talented, very, very fast, very physical. Chris Cole is another guy that's very fast. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. Extremely talented, and has very good coverage skills as well. I had even said before that he's a guy that could play star, and I think that's where you come into the issue with a little bit. And I know Georgia sticking in freshmen in the SEC championship is a hard thing to do. Like Raylan Wilson trying to guard that wheel route when he's getting rubbed, but he has the talent to stick with him. He has the speed to stick with him. He just wasn't in the right location at that time, and it was a good play call. I think Jamon Dumas-Johnson is a guy that struggles with that aspect of the game, and then you see on third down they take him out a lot. They leave Smile in the game a lot, and they take Dumas-Johnson out when they come in the dime package. So I think you're getting better athletes at the position, not necessarily better linebackers at this point, but I think better athletes, and that goes with Raylan Wilson and CJ Allen as well.
That's a great point. When this theory that I've seen a lot was that Dumas-Johnson was losing his job before he broke his arm. I don't agree with that because you can go back to even when Roquan Smith was here. They've worked in a third and fourth inside linebacker into the rotation. That doesn't mean they're sitting someone down. That just sometimes they have a different package. They like you said that hey, we can get somebody here who's maybe a better cover guy depending on what we think they're going to do on this third down or this second down. But to your point, Allen blew up, absolutely blew up, and the fact that Raylan Wilson was named an All SEC freshman, or wasn't I mistaken?
I don't remember that piece of it.
No, I was pretty sure it was him and somebody else were named All SEC freshmen, and I'm like, where the hell CJ Allen? So I thought he played better than Raylan Wilson.
He played a lot more snaps, that's for sure.
One of the points you made there, Trent, that I think is good is that historically Georgia hasn't expected freshmen to play a lot in these big moments. And freshmen, that may still be the case, but first year on Georgia's roster, you're going to have to be able to plug and play more guys than ever. And I'm curious what that's going to do to just Kirby Smart's general philosophy, because they run a ton of stuff in Georgia's playbooks, offense and defense. I suspect over the next a couple of years, you see Georgia have to simplify a little bit just because each year is going to be such a different roster to be able to accent the best players on the team. I think that's one of the reactions that is going to be forced by this, just kind of the coaching philosophy piece of it.
Yeah. And also you got guys that are freshmen that come in that if they don't play, they're looking at transfer portal as well. And that's another thing you got to take into account. And you get a guy like Ellis Robinson come in. He don't play the first year. He's a Miami kid. What happens to him after the first year if he doesn't get on the field? And that's not to say Ellis Robinson will jump in the transfer portal. It could be any of these freshmen. I'm just saying he is an immensely talented kid that is probably the future, but you can't wait now. Like you have to kind of force them onto the field or force them into situations early in their career because of the chance that they're going to transfer.
And you might not even have that leash. Look at Dylan Raiola right now. Like that's a piece of what's going on there too.
Yeah. To your point, folks want to celebrate how well Georgia's doing on the recruiting trail, and they should. you're a Georgia fan and you see that you've got the number one class, and we just went down the list of inside linebackers they're bringing in. They're bringing in 6 offensive linemen. How many of those guys are going to play in the first year or the second year? So I can guarantee you, we'll talk. We can celebrate a week from, well, not even a week. Next Wednesday, we'll be putting out tweets. So and so is officially a dog. So and so is officially a Georgia Bulldog. So and so is officially a Georgia Bulldog. We should put little asterisk next to it until they decide to transfer because they're not getting any playing time, because 3 of these guys out of that 6 were better than the other 3. And again, I don't want to call it natural selection, but it's the way of it. So now it's a little bit easier for them to transfer because they're going to. I want to give a shout out to Casey and his super chat here. I appreciate that. He says, I'm starting to GoFundMe for UGA NIL. I want to switch gears real quick and talk about NIL because, everyone's like, oh, this is all about NIL. A lot of it is about NIL. Dylan Raiola is about NIL. A couple guys who might go into the portal, it's about NIL. If you're Kirby Smart, you're pretty much, I don't want to be exaggerating, but you could be in a situation where you have to have 85 meetings with your current players, all of whom probably want more NIL because they're hearing about other guys getting more NIL or getting better deals. All of them are thinking about going, not all, but a lot of them could be thinking about going to the transfer portal because they could find out the value of what they're worth with other schools reaching out to them. And it's not like you're dealing with agents. Some of those guys have agents, but a lot of times the agent is an uncle, a brother, a friend, a guy they know, somebody they trust. And that might be their only client. If you're a professional agent and you have, 50, 100, 1,000 clients, all of your money is not tied up in one client, one person. Whereas if you're just representing a second string cornerback, well, you got to get the biggest deal for him and whatever you're going to get out of it. So the negotiation could be, in other words, you want them to have good agents because the good agents understand the market and understand what they can get, and they have other clients and they're getting paid that way. But Kirby could be dealing with potentially 85 guys with just shitty agents, who are all trying to hold Georgia over a barrel, get as much as they can. And at the same time, Kirby's philosophy is like, we're not going to go give a kid $750,000 to come play at Georgia. If quarterback, cornerback, defensive lineman, we're just not going to do that out of high school. Now, would you do that for maybe a guy that's coming back to be a quarterback, a proven quarterback, a proven center, a proven defensive end? Maybe. And again, I'm just throwing the numbers out there, but you're trying to have 85 conversations there. Then you've got the 28 guys that are committed who are saying, well, like Justin Williams, Dylan Raiola, I'm committed to you, but Texas wants to give me X. Nebraska wants to give me Y. So now you got 28 other conversations. Then you got the kid you're trying to bring in from the portal. So you're trying to replace these 17 guys or whoever. And
by the way, you need a cornerbacks coach, a defensive backs coach.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to say I feel sorry for anybody making $11 million a year, but damn, you were earning every bit of that. I can't imagine how his phone stays charged.
And you're playing Florida State in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is.
Yes.
And you mentioned just 85. I mean, you're dealing with the walk-ons too. You're dealing with you're dealing with Muse.
Preferred walk-ons, yeah. There's guys like Muse, a couple other guys who are essentially.
I mean, you're having to meet with Dan Jackson too, because he's got one more year of eligibility. Although he walked, he has an year of eligibility left. So you're having to meet with all these guys.
And those guys, what are they getting from Georgia? They're getting a very good NIL package that's, I won't say it's the equivalent of a scholarship, but it takes a lot of the pressure off that family because their kids like, look, I could transfer and actually be on scholarship somewhere else. I've started at Georgia. If I go to Georgia Tech, I'll be on scholarship. And Georgia has a deal set in place where we can't, maybe it could be the full value of the scholarship for all I know, but they take care of their preferred walk-ons. So you're right, 85 plus another 20 preferred walk-ons, and then 28 kids in the recruiting class, and however many in the portal you're talking to.
And also trying to make sure your coaches are happy.
Oh my God. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. So again, I'm just saying that for folks who are like, what the hell is going on? The sky's falling. The sky is not falling. It's just the way things are going to be for now. Now, how do you change it? How do you fix it? Hell if I know.
It ain't gonna fix until something happens with It's just going downhill year after year with the way that they just keep opening things up. And now
yes and no. Like, it's more popular and profitable than ever, the entire college football enterprise. Now it weeds people out. It chews them up, grinds them out, and it's kind of a horrible workplace environment right now. But in terms of just fan interest, I mean, ESPN went live yesterday for what, 2 hours to look at schedules for a year later? Like, imagine that happening in the 90s. That's crazy.
The one thing I really feel bad about, and I think the transfer portal has done this, is the sleeper 3 stars that come on late that might get an opportunity to have a scholarship that don't get a scholarship now because of the transfer portal. I mean, you can fill your spots with the transfer portal. And I think those guys are the ones that, I mean, you look up and down the NFL draft, 2-star, 2-star, 3-star, 2-star, 3-star, 2-star. And those guys might not have an opportunity at a D1 school now because you have to save spots for the portal. You have to plan for that.
Yeah, I see people saying, or high school coaches saying they're just not recruiting high schools anymore. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I get your point, but if you're right, the fringe guy, they might not be recruiting as much.
I think the fringe guy is the one that's being impacted.
Yes,
but like the market's just going to correct itself. The fringe guy then is going to go to Charlotte or something, and then they're going to be a stud there. And guess what? In a year, they're going to whatever big school wants them there.
Yeah.
So that's the new path for the 3-star, not to go to big time school and work your way up. It's to go to a smaller school and then bail on them instantly for probably a better NIL deal.
It's definitely killed the JUCO world.
Yes.
I mean, if you go JUCO, you better be in the top.
Colby Young, baby, Lackawanna Community College.
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened quick. Jermaine Johnson was just doing the JUCO to UGA, then to Florida State first round pick trajectory, and that path is almost gone now. Yeah,
but I hate it for anybody who doesn't have the grades and might need that to qualify that way. But I feel bad for any G5 guys because anybody that you develop that's any good is going to get pulled away. And so you go from an area of strength. You get, hey, this cornerback that we've developed, he's come on great. He is phenomenal. We are set at cornerback. Now let's go get another good wide receiver. Let's go get a defensive end. He just transferred to Alabama. He just transferred to Georgia. He just transferred to Tennessee. Yeah.
But I think when you have staff changes too, him getting a job, Fran Brown getting a job at Syracuse, he's taking some of Georgia's players that were kind of lost on the depth chart, and the Meeks and
Look how many guys are at Georgia Tech that weren't going to play here. Now Rylan Godey is there. Brett Seether's there. 2 of Georgia's tight ends. Plus
the second half of tight end you.
I'm sorry?
I said the second half of tight end you.
Yeah. Well, the inverse is true with the coach. I mean, look at Texas A&M's roster and how it got pillaged and continues to be. I wonder if that's going to force teams like Arkansas this year. Arkansas probably was on the verge of firing Sam Pittman. Were they more patient to try to preserve some of the roster things? Florida, looking at the stretch it has next year, like I would think Napier is close to being on the chopping block. Is it going to look at its roster and say, all right, we need to keep some of this and maybe keep some stability? Or do you have to kind of bottom out to do that? Because the second you do, those players are gone. But what we're seeing is maybe if you don't, your players are also gone.
Out of all the Georgia's transfers, who has really flourished
elsewhere?
I mean, I know AD Mitchell. I know Jermaine Burton.
AD is the one I think of the most.
Trez Mitchell was lost. Trez Marshall was lost on the depth chart here, and he went and played 400 snaps or something this year at Alabama.
I mean, Matt Landers was a good example. He was a starter at Arkansas and got a shot in the NFL out of it.
Yeah, Richard Burns played a lot more.
Who was the star that William Poole started over and that went to Arkansas and was starting safety?
Breeny?
Latavius Breeny, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, but there's a lot more guys that we could point to that went somewhere and just did not play. I mean, I don't know that what's his name? Scruggs is tearing it up wherever he is. I mean,
Rylan Godey, he caught his first pass against Ole Miss on the season. Then he transferred to Mississippi State. So
That was a particularly weird spot though, because that's a whole roster that didn't even have tight ends, and all of a sudden he's coming in there to a new system, and that was a mess. He has a better shot to contribute at Georgia Tech, but
Sure.
yeah, I agree. Like he didn't have any shining success there.
Curtis Maximus 51 says, from a journalistic standpoint, this is amazing. It's a new story every day, if not multiple times a day. Yeah, it's amazing. We're having so much fun. please kill me.
Yeah, all those days where we were monitoring who's what high school kid is taking secret visits on the last week. Yeah, I ain't even worried about a high school kid this past week. So.
No, and I will. Hey, we got the greatest job in the world. We get paid to talk Georgia football. I'd give my right arm to have this job, and I'm glad I'm here. But to your point, it is challenging, because here's the thing: I could write about 3 other guys who are thinking about going into the portal. Do you do it? Do you put that out there? You know, Dash was hearing about. I hadn't heard about Dumas Johnson until much earlier in the day, and then Dash was like, "Yeah, I've seen it." And then the whole Dylan Raiola thing. Somebody tipped me off. They told me a rumor about him a week ago, or 7 days before the whole thing with Nebraska came out. I dismissed it because the particulars in the rumor didn't match up to facts. It's like, oh, his parents want first-class flights from California to go to his games. I'm like, his parents live here. It's a fake rumor, but there's actually more to it. So there's something going on. Who went in the portal yesterday that we were kind of watching? Oh, Marvin Jones Jr. But we heard about he might go in there. Then we're told, nah, it's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. Then it does. It's just, it does bring up some interesting journalistic questions. Do you do the blow by blow? Here's one journalistic ethic. Raise your hand if you think that Carson Beck asked for $4 million.
So much of the money that's being talked about out there is just blabber.
Yeah, that's
nowhere near that.
And Raul getting $3 million to go to Nebraska.
Yeah. So the latest I heard was, I heard 3. I heard 1.5. That is incorrect as well. So
go look at NFL contracts right now. Like, if you believe these are the numbers out there, then what you're saying is that eventually college football will surpass the NFL. Yeah, that's and it's not going to. And here's the thing: everyone says it's out of control. How much do you think? How much do you think is actually out there in money? And how long do you think you can get this sustained amount of giving? I get why Nebraska's doing it. They haven't been relevant in a long time. I get why Missouri did it. Now, why they went and got Luther Burden, then Williams Nwaneri, and they tried to get. Did they get Ringo? Or Wingo?
No, he went. Is it Texas? I mean, they still could get him, but
yeah. I'm just saying,
they haven't been to a bowl game since Nick Chubb was at Georgia.
Right. If you're Tennessee, I could see you throwing money. Auburn has thrown money at it. Georgia's still trying to get KJ Bolden, but I don't think FSU is their biggest competition anymore. I think it's Auburn right now. My point is, you remember how frustrated Georgia fans were. If you heard the term 1980, it was like a slap in the face. Every time you pointed out your dominance over Florida or Tennessee or whoever, they go 1980. It was just the fallback thing, to make fun of a Georgia fan because they hadn't won a title since 1980. You can't tell me when Kirby Smart got here and started asking people for money, donors, and you saw the donations, they just shot through the roof. People started giving more money. Hey, we need a new indoor facility. You got it. We need a new West End zone. You got it. We need a new football building. You got it. I mean, UJ didn't have to pay for any of that stuff. All donors, all funded. They gave it to them. Now it needs money for NIL. They're getting it. Now they're behind a lot of other people for NIL. They need a lot more. But when it comes to if you're an Auburn fan, a Tennessee fan, a Florida fan, you haven't won a title in forever, and the head coach comes to you and said, "Hey, we need $500,000 for this kid." There are people who will pay it. And again, you're not doing it all at once. It's like $30,000 a month. Some people have that. My point is, that they'll do that for a few years, but then if the kid that you've given $25,000 a month for to be the for your advertising for your car dealership or your your rental company or whatever you got him advertising for. In 2 years, he transfers, and then the coaches come to you year 3 and go, "Hey, we need this quarterback." You're like, "Well, man, I gave you guys $1 million, and it didn't fix anything. And the guy I gave it to you is gone. So I don't even get any residual return on investment because I got to take down all those billboards of him holding up my, the soup company that I own." So I just want, how long can you keep seeing I don't see the numbers growing to your point, Dane. We're talking about NFL money versus college money, because the college money for NIL is coming from people, and you can only ask these donors for so much money.
Well, big money people want to see a return on their investments, and
Yes,
eventually,
they
when
want
that
to see
doesn't
titles.
yield, then they're going to stop giving that same amount of money. The other piece of this too, and this was a trope, Trent, that was used all the time in recruiting. They're like, "Hey, if you miss out on a recruit, maintain the relationship with them. Don't burn the bridge, because you might end up seeing them again." Well, like, okay, what if Rayola does this to Nebraska and he goes there and it's a dumpster fire for a year because it's a hard conference and it's Nebraska with not a good roster? You don't think Kirby Smart would be willing to bring him back to Georgia in a year if he needs him? Absolutely, they're going to maintain those relationships. Now, this particular one, maybe it's burned just because it so close to the signing. But like, you get over hurt feelings real fast if you're a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to be hurt about it. Curtis says, "Will there be a market correction for these teams overpaying?" Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you see the teams that have gone out on a limb and done bulk classes. Look where they're at now. I mean, you look at the Texas A&Ms. You look at you look at Miami. Are they benefiting? I mean, they're still terrible. And you look at
They put
these.
together a great program for Tyreek Stevenson. Did that win him a title?
I mean, you look at these schools and yes, they're forking over money, but they're forking over money for a championship that year. And if they don't get it, they're pissed off folks. And who's the first one going to be to blame? The head coach.
Yep.
Well, we ask, like, will there be a market correction? Look at the contract at Texas A&M for Mike Elko in comparison to the contract for Jimbo Fisher. That is a market correction where A&M.
What was the difference there? I never saw it.
Oh, it's a lot. I mean, it's all in incentives for Elko at this point. They're paying Jimbo $75 million not to work, and I think Elko's like a base salary of like $7 million a year, and he has to win college football playoff games to get closer to $10 million a year.
Yeah, it's way down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's higher than Duke, but it's way down.
But to your point, and again, there was the over promising of that quarterback in Florida who was supposed to get all this money, and that didn't work out. There's the rumored $30 million recruiting class at Texas A&M, which it wasn't that high, but they did pay a lot. Some of those kids came out and said, "Hey, we didn't get that." The ones that did get it, I mean, they're in the portal. Jimbo lost his job, so you can go heavy money, but it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. This is why I tell folks, don't worry. 2 reasons. It's happening everywhere. Who do you want handling negotiations and roster management of all the coaches in college football? I say this every time. I'm going to pick Kirby Smart, not because I cover him and not because we're friends. We're not. He barely knows who the hell I am. My point is, if I had to pick, if I'm a fan of any team, if I'm at Texas, Florida, Tennessee, wherever, and I'm like, I need somebody who can do roster management, I want Kirby Smart. I want somebody who is forward thinking and will figure, again, some people said in here that it has to evolve. It has to change. There has to be more to it. It's a moving landscape. It happens in every business. Our business has changed. We didn't do this before. We just hit 27.6 thousand followers on TikTok. I'm making TikToks now at age 51. The business changes. The landscape changes. If you want anybody who's forward thinking and not set in their ways and can roll with the punches, and the person on there said, "Hey, don't be a Dabo Swinney and not adjust." Who's going to adjust the quickest, fastest, and the most insightful? Kirby Smart.
Well, you have to give Kirby credit too for securing some of the players that he did for the runs that he's had here.
Yeah.
Because I had heard from people that would know that within the last 2 years, Carson Beck was pretty much out the door. Like, Florida State was pretty much going to happen. We know Amarius Mims was down there visiting there. Like, Norvell brought out the fight song and everything else, and that video was put out there. Dejan Edwards, like same thing. And these were contributors that maybe they looked elsewhere and they ended up staying at Georgia for that. It's going to be a little harder to do that now, but Kirby Smart's proven he can get those players to stay. I do think that Georgia probably needs to do a slightly better job of some of the in-state recruiting, because sometimes even just for proximity, but like you can find more players that just grew up Georgia fans in this era, and you're more likely to kind of keep them emotionally, whereas someone else doesn't. But look, a lot of these dudes don't even know college football or like college football; they just play it.
I think Don's got a good question here. Are these kids leaving because of the rotations that we deploy on both sides of the ball? If you start losing a bunch of starters, then I would give that theory some credibility. But so far, you've lost 2 guys, 3 guys in the 2 deep. Now, if you lose 10 of them, then maybe that's it.
Yeah. You also got to think of, if you're not using those rotations, how many would it be? 40 players in the portal instead of 20.
Yep.
Well, the other aspect, the rotations, I think, as the conferences grow and the schedules get more difficult, Georgia's going to have more injuries next season because it's a harder schedule and having to go on the road like it is. I look at the NFL and how you can't keep quarterbacks healthy. I think all these big-time schools are going to need 2 and 3 quarterbacks ready to go starting as these schedules kind of consolidate and become what they are. So, like these quarterbacks that are transferring to get instant playing time, they're going to have regrets. Like they're going to want to have been at Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Auburn.
This does bring up a good question or a good point from Marvin Charles. He says, I see Kirby doing this for another 5 years, unless there are changes to the transfer portal. You got to imagine this is wearing out the coaches. I mean,
I don't think it's just Kirby. I think it's everybody.
No, that's what I'm saying. All of them. That's why I said it's wearing out the coaches, plural, because Kirby, a couple coaches left because how relentless Kirby is on the recruiting side. He cracks a whip when it comes to his staff. He drives them hard. And you know that coming in. I have to be recruiting 365 days a year. I got to be, because Kirby is. He's doing it, When you have 8 kids come in on an official visit, he spends an hour with each one. So on say a game weekend, he's going to spend an hour with every kid. That's 8 hours. There's some weekends where they'll bring in 12 official visits. You know what he's going to do? He's going to spend 12 hours with those kids. Nobody else in college football does that. They'll meet with them. But they don't meet with them and their family for an entire hour. Kirby does. It's insane. He's already driving himself that hard, just like a lot of other coaches are. And Kirby's system has gotten out. Kirby's got a good coaching tree. Other guys are doing it. They're learning how Georgia recruits. They're busting their butts every day. And now you add this on top of it where you bust your ass and you get a kid to finally come here. He goes through 1 year, his freshman year, and he's like, I'm leaving. Georgia busts their ass to get Zeke Haynes. Now he's gone. I mean,
some of these dudes are just wired
like,
differently.
I'm not doing it anymore.
The fact that Nick Saban can do what he's doing at his age is freaking remarkable.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do that now at my age.
I'm with you though. You do this like 5 more years, and you're like, I'm done.
But Kirby's
I got $1 gajillion. What am I going to do?
He's one of the more competitive people out there. So he's fueled by this too. So now maybe he gets tired and wants to go golf more, but like that doesn't seem like his personality. If anything, what you might end up seeing is some of these high-level college coaches, when they get their shot at the NFL, they take it. I don't know that Kirby's wired like that, but you see a lot of these assistants. You just saw Todd Monken go right back to the NFL.
Yeah.
It's just you get a lot more time off. It's simply easier. You're not dealing with emotional teenagers all the time.
I would do the thing where you get that Jimbo contract. You do it for a few years, and then you're like, we haven't won as many games as you want. Why don't y'all fire me and give me that giant payout? I'm gonna go to Lake Oconee and put on my Georgia hat like he's been doing apparently. And
Dan Mullen seems pretty happy these days.
Well, here's the thing. Imagine how much money Kirby Smart would make as an ESPN commentator, an ABC commentator, a Fox guy. He'd blow away anybody out there. Same with Saban. Saban calls it like he sees it. So I think they have futures there. But
put him on the playoff committee.
Oh man! Hey, give me a Kirby, Nick Saban, and Steve Spurrier show like they do Monday Night Football, like the Mannings do, the Manning show. Give those guys calling game or commenting about games as they're going live.
It's kind of like they did with the national championship a few years ago
Yeah.
when Georgia was playing, and they had Jimbo Fisher on ESPN in their room talking play-by-play of the game.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, hey, we started the concept. Dane Young, Coach Donnan, we do the watch along, and I mean, it is fascinating to hear a coach watch other coaches and point out what's going on. That's why the Mannings thing's been so successful. We started it, but I'm just saying that's some place they could go, and it would not shock me there. Yeah. What was that? I'm just trying to figure out I can't figure it out what Luke's referring to there.
10 to 15 more years, I think.
Yeah. Top tier head coaches are going to get fed up with everything that's going on. They can retire and not think twice about it. Yeah. But again, then the other coaches will come up and we're still going to follow them and we're still going to watch it. And so, and they're guys, here's the thing. If you come up through the ranks and this is how the system works, this is just what you're used to. You don't know any different. And you come and coach, and Glenn Schumann's going to be fine with this. Dan Lanning's going to be fine with this. Kirby Smart.
There's too many coaches in college football and presidents that are against this whole process that something will change. I'm not saying the transfer portal. I'm not saying what will change, but something's going to change over the next couple of years over NIL or how it's dealt with, or something's going to change because it just can't keep at this pace.
Oh, you're right. And the problem is I worry that the changes are going to come legislatively. Or not, excuse me. Are going to come through court filings. We just saw that the NCAA is not even going to. There was a temporary restraining order saying that you can't keep a kid from transferring twice and take away his eligibility on the second time. And that's only a 14-day ruling. And the NCAA said, yeah, we're not going to fight that. So again, it's only good for 14 days. But Jared Moorhead, who's actually in charge of that rotating position there, he said, yeah, these kids only need to have one transfer in them that gives them immediate playing time. I could see a situation where a judge basically decides who can transfer and who can't. It's not the rules committee. It's not anybody like that. It's just, hey, guess what? The NCAA lost the case, so here we go. And we don't know what the far-reaching effects of this are going to be, but this judge in Texas rules this way. This judge in Florida rules this way. This judge in Washington, D.C. rules this way. And that's our new rule says, our new system. And they could make it so much worse.
I mean, I don't have a problem.
Biden's fault. Stop it.
If I worked in it, maybe I'd have more of a problem just because it's such a bear to recruit right now. But I don't mind players having agency on where they go. They have that power. They are the product, right? So if you say that players only get one transfer, then are you going to say coaches can only move jobs one time? Because we're moving down that road where players are employees of these football teams.
No, I think you're right. I think I think what's going to come down is eventually the players are just going to get a huge chunk of the TV money.
So and I saw today they came out with if the rule is if they choose to play those guys, they will lose a year of eligibility if it's reversed in court.
Yeah, because again, it's only a 14-day temporary restraining order. If it goes back and
so how
the
risky
plaintiff
do you
loses
want to
in
be?
court and you played, guess what? You're screwed. So
there's a litany of lawsuits against the NCAA right now. It's very toothless of what it can and can't do. So
and they're losing every one of them.
Yes, I mean they don't have any ground to stand on here. And at some point, these bigger schools may say we're just done with the NCAA altogether.
Okay, here's the death of the NCAA. Go ahead. Drew.
Has the Michigan case just disappeared?
Oh yeah. Hey, well, no, he served 3 games, so it doesn't matter.
You don't hear nothing, but that was by the Big Ten. That's not even about the NCAA. So has NCAA just disappeared from the Michigan case?
Big Ten has no incentive to do anything else, right? They're like, oh, cool, national championship run. Let's try this.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
There may be a CBA, and I like Chris's comment about Kirby's holding when people announce it. Yeah, it's somebody asked about London Humphreys. If that kid were going to commit, let's say he knew he's going to commit today, and calls Kirby up and says, "Yeah, I'm coming." I can see Kirby saying, "Hey, let's wait till Dylan Raiola decommits, and then you announce that you're coming." Bad news, good news. Would not shock me in the slightest.
That's when you see Carson Beck's coming back.
Exactly, Dylan Raiola. I'm transferred. I'm going to Nebraska. Carson Beck goes, "1 more year." I'm like,
It's going to happen. I mean, it's just wait till Monday. I mean, it's going to happen.
I get. It would not shock me at all to see it work out that way. The way they line it up. Oh, real quick, the death of the NCAA, at least as an organization, could come from the case wherein I met with a big time supporter of the University of Georgia, and he said, "Look at that case where they're suing for back NIL."
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, these guys said, "Look, you had no right to prevent us from making money on our name, image, and likeness. So that cost us this amount of money when we were playing. The interest on that, the penalties, and then the punishment for that is sometimes 3 times the actual amount. It could be in the billions, and we want to get paid. It becomes a class action lawsuit. Every former player, even guys like AJ Green, who got busted for that. They're like, it cost me money, and we want Todd Gurley. We want back pay, man. And then all of a sudden somebody's on the hook for billions of dollars. Who's going to pay it? The NCAA doesn't have it. All that TV money doesn't come to them.
Yep.
So then they might turn to the president. So the president's like, "Oh, well, no, you guys, your issues with the NCAA. They made the rules." And then people say, "Well, who is the NCAA? It's you. You're the president." So now all of a sudden the schools could be on the hook. That is a ticking time bomb that's going to make NIL and portal stuff look like nothing, because somebody's going to be asked to pay that. So, and if the case goes that way, it may not. I don't know. I'm just saying that let me put that on your radar, just like the transfer portal rules.
But even if the discussions go in that direction, what you're going to end up doing is seeing more segmenting of where we're at in college. It's not going to be 130, 140, whatever FBS teams. It's going to be, here's your top tier, the ones that make all the money. And then here's a tier below that, and a tier below that, and a tier below that. And you're going to end up with maybe 40 teams that can afford to do what college football is. But they're also going to be the ones that cash in the most money on this TV product.
I love that AJ Green talk there with like a word. Yes. Let's ask a question here. It says, do y'all think Carson Beck returns?
I was told tonight again, yes, that the plan is for him to return. I've been surprised that it has taken this long. We still don't have a for sure answer. Maybe they're not going to do it that way, but I anticipate he will return.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's returning. If he gets his $4 million.
Damn it. There are people going to say, "Hey, Trent Smallwood said on the show he's asking for $4 million. I knew it."
And they need him to return. I mean, he had a great season this year too. But like, if you had the optics of losing him, Vandegrift, and Raiola all in a 2-week period, like that's not great for Georgia. And so I think this is the biggest recruit that Georgia has this offseason, and it sounds like it's going to go in their direction.
Yeah, somebody was saying if he would just announce, then the storm would be down. I'm like, what storm? I mean, I get people are upset about the portal, but don't. It's not the first time you've had a series of bad news. It's don't get spoiled with all the winning, thinking that things aren't cyclical. Things are.
I think the problem where Georgia's at right now is why fans are going off the edge is there's just been so much bad news and it hasn't been any good news. And I think if you would have mixed in a Carson Beck coming back, a Julian Humphrey coming back, somebody like that coming back, Tate Ratledge coming back, all this would be a moot point besides the Raiola thing.
Yeah, I get it, but to me, I guess I just look at them individually. But I can see that. That makes a good point. I reported when did I put that note on the board about Carson Beck? Last week or the week before? It's been a while.
Which one?
Well, the one I said, hey, all signs point to Carson Beck coming back, and that's because everybody in the Butts-Mehre building believes he's coming back. Yeah. Now, does he have a NIL goal that he would like? Yes. Is it $4 million? No, it's nowhere close to that. Will it be met? I'm pretty sure it will be. Has it been met? Probably. Why is he announced? No idea. I know this week there was a meeting with the coaches, and it's supposed to. Again, I'm not saying he is coming back because he hasn't announced it. I'm saying that everything points to that, and I know that Georgia's doing everything they can to get him. He doesn't have to. Everyone says, "Oh, he needs to come back." That is BS. We've talked to scouts. His NFL draft grade, and the schools get 5 of those. I thought they got more, but the schools get 5. They can pick 5 guys and say, "Give us a draft grade on these guys." Now, other people can pay to get one. What they don't want is to be absolutely slammed with every 85 guys going, "Hey, where do I register in the NFL draft grade?" and showing it to their buddies as some sort of status symbol. But they get 5. Carson's was very good. So you get, hey, you're either first round, second round, or 3 through 7. Go back to school. That's why the grades come out. And his was good. So what does that tell you? You look at the money he could be making in the NFL. If he goes, he's not the 6th or 7th or 8th quarterback taken. He's probably 3rd or 4th.
Yes.
So,
and I don't think he improves that much for next year. Like I know some people say he could work his way to the number 1 overall pick. I doubt it. I could be wrong.
And he risks a lot coming back. Yes. How many quarterbacks are injured? So my point is, if he comes back, you guys go get your Beck jerseys. Whatever NIL deal he has, go support the company that assigns him to an NIL deal, because that's the best way you can make it good for him to come back. He does have a lot of options. But what I'm hearing from inside the building is it looks like it is going to happen. It has looked that way for some time. And, of course, at the last second, again, Monday, somebody that I trust within the program said that Smile Munden and Dumas Johnson were coming back. Great news. Didn't report it because it hadn't happened. And then what do we hear today, or started here a little earlier? He's thinking about it. Just like we said that Julian Humphrey's thinking about it. Michael Williams is thinking about it. Don't know if it's going to happen. But now that we saw that Dumas Johnson is expected to. Okay, well, that's bigger. So any moment he could pop up in the portal. So any moment Carson Beck could say, "Yes, I'm coming back. I expect Tate Ratledge to come back." That's huge. You're not having to replace Marius Mims, Tate Ratledge, Cedric Van Pran, Xavier Truss. Now you get at least whoever's your right tackle next year can turn right to Tate Ratledge the whole time and say, "Hey, man, what are we doing on this play? I forgot to play."
I mean, that's a lot to like of the offensive line for next year, because I thought Fairchild played well. Michael Morris, I thought, played well. So if you have 3 experienced guards like that, that just makes everything else easier, especially when Ernest Green came along throughout the season. So, yeah.
But to your point, the bigger thing to have that quarterback back there who's gone this year. You're not trying to start the year with Malik Murphy from Texas. You're not there with Gunnar Stockton. You're not there with a Ryan Puglisi. You're with a guy who's goes 12-1, 13-1 or 12-2, who's only it's only going to slow down more for him in year 2 as a starter. So,
and going into the season with a new center and a new quarterback is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point. Hey, the one thing Coach Donnan hits us up on all the time, he's always talking about special teams, but he brings it down to center quarterback exchange. That's just.
I mean, you saw it when the Georgia Ole Miss game. You've seen it all year.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff we're seeing from fans, right? It's just where we're at on the calendar too. Of like, Brock Bowers is not going to play for Georgia. I mean, maybe he plays in the bowl game, but he's not at Georgia next year. And so, like, you don't see the Brock Bowers talent behind him. But guess what? You don't see those things until they start playing football again. So we're going to see some young guys in this bowl game against Florida State and be like, "Oh, I haven't seen that. Like, that's cool. I'm excited about that." Spring's going to come around and we're going to get reports on, have you heard what this guy's doing in spring ball? And then it builds up from there. There's a lot of superstars at Georgia that are exiting, but there are new superstars emerging too. It just takes a while to kind of see who those are going to be.
And last year, maybe arguably the most important person on offense was Darnell Washington.
Yes.
What are you going to do without Darnell Washington? How is Brock Bowers going to be without Darnell Washington? And I think Georgia answered a lot of those questions this year. So it'll be more questions answered next year.
My unfounded optimism about next year will be just the law of averages. I don't think you could have as many or more starters that get injured next year as you had this year. Just mind-boggling the number of guys that got hurt. And people go, "Oh, that's excuses, next man up." Don't give me that bullshit. It's a situation where you had so many guys, and you guys talking about Brock Bowers coming back this year, and he still, wins the Mackey Award despite having surgery mid-season. That's just insane. I'm thinking, just can you?
You didn't have a healthy Ladd McConkey and Brock together all year besides one game.
That's your best two weapons.
You had a wide receiver at running back. You had
Marius Mims missed most of the season.
Your best tackle gone, and I know we're talking about Dumas Johnson and saying yes, Georgia has talent there, but they needed Dumas Johnson this year because that talent was freshman, and that talent's going to be a year older next year, and that it's going to take a little bit of the ease off of Dumas Johnson leaving if he.
Kyle Munden was hurt all year,
but they've just had injuries piled up all year, and I mean losing Julian Humphrey I thought was huge because he was coming on, taking snaps away from the other cornerbacks, and he might have been a starter in the SEC championship. He might have earned that spot. So it was just one after another.
Well, right. To me, the thing that I would have most optimism for next year is that the structure of the sport has changed to where Georgia has more margin for error. That a 3-point loss against a really good team is not going to wreck your season like it did.
That's a great point. Yeah. Well, I was making the point, and then it turned into a giant discussion that now it's better to be the number 3 team in the SEC than the number 2 team in the SEC.
Georgia hasn't lost a regular season game since like 2000. I don't even know. So don't expect them to.
Since COVID, right?
Yeah, since Florida, Jacksonville.
Yeah,
when you had two broken quarterbacks. So stop it.
I thought your point though, Roddy, about it may be a detriment to play in the conference championship. I thought that was a really, really good point, and I hadn't given the thought that you had.
Yeah, so let's say that Georgia goes 10-2 next year, but if you're the number 3 SEC team and you don't play in the SEC title game, at worst you go on the road and you have to, play somebody else, and you play your 3 games. But you could play in the SEC title game, lose that one, and still have to play 3 games. And in the SEC title game, you lose a starter or 2 because of injury, and then you have less time to prepare. I'm like, man, that's just.
I think that's going to be another interesting thing that they look at coming down the pipe. What impact does championship games have on this whole ordeal? Because when the conference is starting to get a little bigger as the years go on, because I think it's going to continue to grow, these conferences.
Because the way the rankings were this year, you would have had 4 SEC teams in the playoff, and one of those would have been Ole Miss. That's probably a better spot to be in than what Georgia had to do go to play Alabama.
Well, I mean, Georgia would have been playing Ole Miss if it had been this year.
You go into the conference championship and you're ranked 10th and you're not playing in the conference championship. I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Those teams above me, well, they might get knocked out, but I'm in.
Yeah, this is some of the best players for you to not played most of the season. Yeah, it happens. Jermaine Burton didn't play a whole lot. George Pickens.
A.D. Mitchell was out all year, pretty much.
Along those same lines, I still want to do a story on just the sheer number of great Georgia players who've only played 2 seasons. They either get hurt, redshirt or something. Then after 3, their 3rd year, they leave, and it's like
Roquan's one. He didn't hardly play any as a freshman, and then
then there's gone. It's like, man, that's rough. Chris says I'd rather be 3rd or 4th in the SEC. Again, you don't aim for it, but if you wind up being 3rd, if things don't go your way, you're 3rd or 4th. I think you're still in. So to Dane's point, Foster Moss says 11-1. Yeah, and if you don't make the SEC championship game, fine. 11-1. You're hosting a game. You get all the gate revenue. You get all the concessions. You get another game, and then you go play somebody.
Where Missouri was sitting. They were the number 1 2-loss team, and they were that way after they beat the piss out of Tennessee, and after they played Georgia and beat Tennessee, and they're sitting there like, all we got to do is win these last 2 regular season games. We're good. And
last year, Alabama and Tennessee both would have been hosting. Georgia and LSU played in the championship game. Georgia would have had a bye. I got craziness. Well, that lets me know I got to go.
Damn.
I got my phone connected to it.
Not only does Roddy get on TikTok, that's his ringtone.
Well, we're going to end the show there, folks, because I literally do have to go. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. We will talk to you later.